Okay, maybe just start just saying why you're here.
Oh, that question has been asked numerous times, and it was a calling. Honestly, it was nothing that I thought about. The moment that I heard about it a month before it started, I knew I had to be here to help in some way, to affect change. I think inside I felt that it's the time. It's not, I didn't think about it, I just know it's time to affect change, that the imbalance and injustice of our government with regard to greed and the financial institutions is out of control, and so that's why I'm here, to affect change.
Have you been here for the whole period of time?
Yes, I arrived on the 17th of September, the first day of the occupation, and I have been here. I was here for 10 days, or 9 days. I left on the 10th day to go recuperate. It's very difficult. Recharge, do a little of work at home, and then I came right back. I'm here in intervals of 10 days.
And how do you think it's developing? Is it escalating? What's the sort of development of the
It certainly is growing. It's more difficult for us to have meetings, generally, to discuss the issues of building a community. But there are still so many people engaged in and dedicated to the creation of our own community. It's just the number of people here now is substantially higher. It's great.
And sort of the motivation for people to be here, you find that there's a red thread going through the cause itself, like the reason behind it?
I feel like, if I understand you correctly, people are inspired to come here now. They're not only inspired to be here, occupations are in over 50 cities in the US currently have started up in relation to this one, because people are finally feeling inspired to rise up and say no more to the government collusion with corporate interests and the greed that has run rampant and has taken over our country.
So is it like a general motivation that?
Yes, I think generally people are now feeling empowered because they see that we're staying. They see that we're succeeding. And I think that we've entered unstoppable. I believe that this movement is now beyond stopping, because it is coming to hometowns everywhere. And I think people are now feeling inspired and motivated, like they can make a difference. They can help change this imbalance. It's exciting.
Well, my name is Bobby. I live here in New York City. I've lived here for 12 years, and I'm here. I moved out of my apartment and moved into the park and started living here at the occupation a little over a week ago. And I'm here because this is the biggest movement for social justice and economic equality in this country in over a decade. It's really big. There's no way to know exactly which direction it'll go, but a lot of positive things are definitely going to come out of this. And the more energy people put into it now, whether you're a social worker or a nurse or an artist or a security guard or a political soapbox person, how much energy you put in it now is really important, and well, to kind of help direct the movement. So it's really important to be here right now.
And you've been here for the whole time period?
Not the whole time period. At first, I wasn't aware, like a lot of people, what this is about.
Yeah.
We were unsure. It's new for this country, at least, to do an occupation with such political motives is a very new thing. It's very new for it to be successful as well. I mean, I've known of building occupations. I've helped with housing rights. I know of community garden occupations in cities, and some rural actions. And those are usually much smaller. And I'm not aware of an occupation on such a large scale in response to economic inequality and social justice that has happened in this country. So I didn't know what this is about. There was a lot of things online about what it could be, and it seemed at first like a lot of people probably thought it was immature. But pretty much there was a call put out by some people with some motives in the direction of a grassroots democratic movement. And people that have gotten involved since then have really directed and molded it. So it doesn't really matter that much who called it. It matters who's here right now and who's involved. And I don't know, what was the question?
So as soon as you maybe saw that there was some kind of motivation that was trying to maybe open up a new way of thinking, a new society, or breaking up the former ways, then you sort of got the interest of participating or be involved in the whole movement.
Sure, and there's a lot of NGOs or organizations or protests with the direction, or art projects. I'm heavily involved in the art scene here in New York, with the direction of changing the country for good or changing the world for good. But this looks successful, and that's why I got involved.
But do you think people are afraid to participate?
I think people's fear to participate has lessened. I think there's going to always be fear to stand up and participate, even if you have something to lose, and everyone has something to lose. There's always going to be fear to participate. If you live in a society where things could be taken away from you, if the police could take your freedom from you, or you could lose your job, or your economic freedom, or your health by coming here, there's that fear. So people that are here are ones who are all taking risks. And I think more and more people are realizing that it's not that big of a risk, and it's worth it.
But you said earlier that you saw that this could work, or you saw something new in this movement, or what's happening here. Could you elaborate on that a bit? Or?
I used to be involved in anti-globalization movement based on economic and social justice. Back 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. That movement was based on large-scale mobilizations and conferences, big protests drawing a lot of people, shutting down an economic organization that a lot of people, including unions and NGOs and other people, felt wasn't representing the people democratically, like the WTO, the IMF, or World Bank, going to cities and trying to shut down the city to get a platform for a more democratic discussion. Or, in some examples, trying to say this is not working at all. The WTO needs to be abolished, we need something different. Or I also in that movement was involved with protesting the democratic process that a lot of people in this country don't feel is very democratic at all. We have an old democracy, it's not a very democratic one. It's not very efficient, it's more of a republic, a lot of people feel. And so a lot of people are frustrated. A lot of people in this country vote. And that I feel has to do with the fact that people don't feel like the politicians really have their interests at heart, and that only rich people are going to get elected, and they won't care about poor people anyways, or even middle class people. So a lot of people just don't vote. You asked me why I think this can work. I used to be involved with large-scale protests. They'd be one time, they'd be ephemeral, and people would try to make them cohesive, but they weren't that effective. And in many ways, the pinnacle moment was a month before the war in Iraq. In 2003, on February 15th, I was at an anti-war protest here in New York, in Manhattan, that drew 500,000 people. And that's a lot of people. It may be the largest protest ever in New York City. I'm not quite sure. I should look this up. I was at one point on top of a UPS truck to get a view, and the guy in the truck was down. He was like, "Yeah, get on my truck," and he was beeping the horn. He was like beeping along with like some drums or horns or something, and in the streets and music. And he was so down because it felt like revolutionary fever. But it felt not really extremely radical. It just felt like people rising up and being like, "No, our government's doing the wrong thing." It's 500,000 people in the street. It's a lot of people. When I stood on top of that UPS truck, farthest I could see for miles, and you can see a lot on 2nd Avenue. All the way up, I could see up to 118th Street, all the way down to 14th Street. It was solid people, solid, roaring people. Not a lot of banners. that was a very grassroots protest. It was people just coming out saying no war in Iraq, and a huge amount of people, very little media coverage. Very, very little media coverage because there was very little arrests, no violence. It was very grassroots, so there weren't big organizations speaking up. And largely because the US government doesn't care what people have to say about wars overseas. It doesn't matter unless it's a threat to the re-election. And at that point, Bush literally said when he was interviewed, I believe, by the BBC or The Guardian, someone in England at the time, I don't remember exactly who it was, he said that the protest didn't matter. They weren't speaking for the American people, he claimed. But I think 500,000 people is a lot of people, and it speaks for a large percentage of the American people. And that felt empowering in the moment. Immediately afterwards, I felt incredibly disempowered. That 500,000 people seemed to have absolutely no effect, even a negative effect possibly, of the fact that all these people had to travel there and get frustrated that they had no effect. And that was one of the last big protests I went to. I stopped going to protests. I became an artist. I became an installer of solar panels. You know, I became a sculptor, and I started getting my life more structured and becoming a healthier person because I felt like my place in this country post September 11th, I would have more impact working with people in communities and with a full-time job than going out in the streets and protesting. That really didn't have a lot of effect anymore. But this occupation feels different. This feels like a growing movement, perhaps a progressive version of the Tea Party. And that said, a lot of people in the Tea Party aren't in the Tea Party, or people go to Tea Party rallies, aren't necessarily right wing. They're just frustrated with the Democrats and the Republicans and the government system. And there's a lot of people in this country who don't like the way policies are made. And I think this movement is a lot more diverse than the Tea Party movement. I think this could be a very progressive, long-term movement in this country of grassroots democratic process to make the government more accountable, to make Wall Street more accountable to the people, the hardworking people, or the people who want to be hardworking in this country. And I think it's going to be effective because it's like I'm in the sanitation crew, and we go around and we're like, this is serious. We're cleaning this up because this is long-term. Like, take us seriously. We have serious medics, we have doctors, we have nurses, because this is really important. We're going to make this last. I just got out of a meeting that was about security, and it was a very impassioned meeting about very basics of society. How do we do security without having to ask someone with money and power to come in and do it for us? So we're doing a lot of the grassroots re-evolving of society right now, and I think it's really great. And I think the messages we get from this movement against those in power can be really threatening, and I think they can be effective.
So sort of the diversity and the fact that you have that will to go through with your meeting or your protest, that sort of makes a stance. Because
of the ongoing recession, because of the endless war that we have in this country, in this world, and those are unifying worldwide features. The whole world is having economic woes. The whole world is having effects from endless war and violence. I think a lot of people are upset in this country, are really upset, and they're not going to take it anymore. And there's a lot of energy. They're not going to go home. They're gonna stay in this occupation movement, whether or not it's in this park or another park, or if it's in every park in the country, or if it evolves into an ongoing movement for years and years and years. They're going to stay because people aren't okay with the way things worked out. We tried it. We tried being a country that consumed and kept buying things and bought things on credit. We tried that in the 90s, and it didn't work. I mean, the illusion was broken, and a lot of people put their money on it, put their lives on it. Like, I think this will work. I think it'd be good. Let's try just buying a lot of things and overexceeding what we can manage. And people are realizing now that they were living beyond their means, and people are trying to figure out right now how to do things right and how to do things sustainably.